Gearing for tank is not easy, requiring a lot of resources and some pretty unexpected trade-offs. In this video, which is part 3 of my 4-part series looking at PvE tanking in the Division, we'll cover everything you need to know about gear, weapons, and mods. Stick around. Guys, welcome back. It's Skill Up here with part 3 of my 4-part PvE tanking series. You'll find links to the other videos in the description below, so check those out if you are keen. As I mentioned before, this series is the most comprehensive set of videos that I have put together to date, so if you like what you see and you find it useful, then please don't forget to like and subscribe. So, gearing for PvE tanking, how is it done? Well, when we talk about gear, we're of course talking about your armor, your weapons, and your mods. So let's knock over your armor first. The easiest way to talk about this is actually through the process that you'll likely be going through as you try to gear for tank yourself. And it goes a little something like this. Firstly, craft or find as much well-rolled stamina gear as you can. So this gear needs to have good stamina rolls, mod slots, and ideally plus damage ballistic shield health, since the ability is the core of your build. It also needs to have good armor rolls. Damage reduction through armor is capped at 65% in this game, or around 4,700 armor. Certain pieces of gear have higher potential armor rolls than others, so check that out. I have linked a helpful spreadsheet in the description below that will help you see what armor rolls you might be chasing. Step 2. After you get as close as you can on the above, spend time recalibrating your gear. Now, I've spent about 1,000 Phoenix points to get my gear sort of close to where it needs to be, so be ready to spend some serious points. Now again, they've actually changed the requirement for recalibration from Phoenix points to credits, but to be honest with you, it's actually much harder to earn the volume of credits that are required to respec large volumes of gear. So just be ready for that. Again, prioritize all of the stats that I have listed above. After you've done that, your priority is now to bring your ballistic shield health to about 400k or more. Now, I've tested this extensively and I've come to the conclusion where 400k is the required amount of HP to be able to reliably tank 3 shotgunners in a challenge mode. Now, just to be really clear, this is a sort of challenge mode, a mission challenge mode, not an incursion challenge mode. Do not try and tank incursion challenge modes. You will die immediately. Even if you are fully stacked with 500k HP on your shield, it will still melt immediately in the face of 1 shotgunner, or and the idea of 2 of them on you at one point in time is just forget about it. So don't try and tank that whatever you do. Just stick to mission challenge modes. That's the limit of what the ballistic shield can handle. And with 400k HP, you can reliably tank 3 shotgunners in that context. Any less than that and your shield will just melt too quickly. So that's the target for you. So you can actually stack higher than 400k, but doing so would actually nerf your other stats even more. So I found that 400k is about the right level to get the most out of your shield without nerfing you too hard. So how do you get your shield to 400k health? Well, the answer obviously is with electronics, mods, and gear. So first up, craft as many electronics mods as you need and slot them into your gear. This should actually go quite a ways towards getting you close to the 400k health that you need on your ballistic shield. If you're still falling short, start putting on some electronics items. I'd really recommend backpacks and masks that have the plus skill power attribute rolled on them, as these set items alone can buff your shield health by as much as 50k. And just as a note, the Tactician's Authority, the new set item that you can get, is actually quite good at this. If you were to get backpack and mask Tactician's Authority with the 2-piece bonus from that, and if those are well rolled, that's a lot of electronics right there, a lot of skill power right there. So check those ones out if you can get access to them. When you're done, you're probably going to look a little something like this. So in my gear, I have around 80k health, I have around 30k skill power, and I have around 4,000 armor. Now of these 3 stats, I'm really only worried about my armor, as I'm keen to get up towards that sort of 65% cap. My shield has a total of 427,000 health, which is more than enough, and my overdose heal will heal me for 67k, which is close enough to being my full health that I'm more than happy with it. So that's gear. That's how you'd approach the challenge of gear. Let's now talk about weapons. So rule number 1 is that your weapon really doesn't mean shit. I mean, I've seen heaps of these tank builds in inverted commas that claim to rock 120k HP and over 100k DPS, and that's fine, and they actually do that, and that's all good. But don't confuse these tank builds with a proper PVE tank build. Shotgunners will still melt through those other tank builds in a split second because they are not using the ballistic shield. In order to tank, your electronics and stamina stats are a priority, meaning your firearm stat is going to be very, very low, making for some very underwhelming DPS. More to the point, you are just never going to be aiming to use your weapon in a way where it does heaps of damage. That's not your job. Your job is to take as much aggro and as much damage as possible so that your DPS can build full glass cannon and completely shred the enemy. That's what makes all of this work in an ideal sense. You worrying about how much damage you do is really just pointless in that context. So instead of asking how much damage you can do with your weapon, ask instead what you can do with your weapon besides damage. And that brings us to the wonderful world of suppression. Now, suppression is a massively underutilized mechanic that basically locks an enemy behind cover, rendering them unable to act. They can't shoot, they can't move or use abilities, they simply sort of cower there, and even if you walk right up to them and start wailing on them, they will just sit there and cop it. So, since you don't have any damage, you may as well suppress enemies. Now, the ideal pattern of play here is for you to tank enemies with your shield until the point where it is destroyed or near being destroyed, hop behind cover, and then suppress those enemies for a few seconds while you wait for your shield to come off cooldown. When that's ready, pop out of cover, rinse and repeat. Now, with this pattern of play, you are in effect constantly CCing enemies, allowing your backline total freedom to do their thing. Now, I won't go into too much detail as I plan to do a few videos on this in the future, but long story short, you'll suppress an enemy by firing over their heads while they are in cover. It lasts for about 5 seconds on elite enemies, but can be instantly refreshed by continuing to fire. The best weapons to do this with is an LMG because it has a huge magazine of generally around 200 bullets. And each bullet actually has an inherent suppression value baked into it. I know this because I've looked through the game files and I've seen that LMGs are actually tailor-made to suppress. So use them as much as you can if suppression is your goal. For your secondary choice, I'd really recommend a Caduceus if you can get your hands on it, simply because it's decent damage and it's one of the very few weapons you can benefit from out of the box from a talent perspective, since most of the talents otherwise require firearms values that you aren't even close to hitting. So yeah, the Caduceus is good if you have it, but don't worry too much if you don't, since you won't really be using it all that much. What you will be using plenty of is your pistol, but to be honest, it doesn't really matter which one you choose here. The most important thing is to stick a plus threat muzzle on it. Again, I won't go into the details here since I'll cover it in a later video in more detail, but the short version is that each bullet from each weapon type has an innate threat value. It's actually not based on your damage, and pistols generally have very low threat values, so you putting this muzzle on will help you get and hold aggros from mobs that you sort of aren't able to get up close and personal to. So that's your weapon setup. Prioritize an LMG and aim to suppress targets when your shield is on cooldown. Use the Caduceus if you have one, but be ready to be using your pistol all day, every day. Aim for the head as much as you possibly can and you'll be just fine. And with that, part 3 of this video series is done. Part 4 of the series, which will be available tomorrow, covers PvE tanking tactics, tips, and tricks to help you understand how to properly use all of this gear that you've invested so much in. So if you're keen on that, then click on the link on screen when it's available. And if you've liked this video and you found it useful, then please remember to like and subscribe, as it helps me out in a big way and it would be super appreciated. Guys, thanks for watching, take good care, and see you in the dark zone. Bye-bye.